Hey guys, Rob Friday here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Predictive Index software to create a job target and start assessing candidates. So I've got a demo account set up here where I've got a demo role for a Starbucks. It will show me any ones that I've created in the past that are similar. So I'll just create a new one. And when I click on that, it'll actually the system will actually make suggestions. So this is a machine learning algorithm that takes into account other assessments that have been completed in the past and basically creates a matching algorithm to help us identify what are the behavioral and cognitive requirements of the role. So I'll click on baristas. I can load my job description in here. If I do that, it actually helps improve the algorithm. So over time, it will be able to be more accurate. That's obviously done on an anonymous basis, but can help the system, as well as help you refer in the future back to what the job description that you were using was. So I'll click Create Job. The system, in this case, actually doesn't have an example ready for me, so it gives me a few options. I can go through a guided process, I can send an assessment to stakeholders, or I can set it manually. If I go to send to stakeholders, I have a couple of other options. I can also pick a role model or several role models if I have people in this role that I want to model the target after, or I can send the job assessment email, ideally to 3 to 5 contributors, but you can use as many as you want. My recommendation is always to make sure that you get a good cross-section of stakeholders that have insights into the role, something valuable to add, obviously a good understanding of what success in that role looks like. I'm just going to go back for a second and go through the guided process. So this is the same thing that stakeholders would do. And basically someone picks the important and frequent aspects of the role to help us define the job. So there's 3 pages of this piece. And then there's also a few questions regarding cognitive at the end of this. Here, there's 20 questions related to cognitive ability for the job, either basic, intermediate, advanced, or none. These are forced choice, so you do have to fill them all out. Once that's done, it will create a behavioral and cognitive target for the role. Now, I've already created a demo role, so I'm just going to go back to my home page here. And I've sent this out to several stakeholders. You can see that I've got Coffee Shop Barista, and I've titled it Starbucks, just to give people a little bit more information that I'm looking for a fancy coffee shop barista. You'll notice when I click on it, it doesn't give me the target to start with. I actually have to go into the system and use a bit of my training, which we provide to clients, to teach them how to finalize the job target. So I can click on Set Job Target here, and it will pull up the responses that my contributors have provided. So you'll see down here, I've got a number of people that have contributed by filling out an assessment, and you'll see that I start to see bands show up here. Now, as I cursor over the various responses down here, you can start to see these different kind of bars show up. So these 4 bars represent the 4 behavioral factors. So the top one is dominance, the second one down is extroversion, then we have patience and formality, and this shows up on a sigma scale. So the center is the center of the bell curve. And if it's to the right, that means a higher amount than average. And if it's to the left, a lower amount than average for each of the different factors. So overall, I can immediately start to see that there's some trends are showing up. We're seeing that it's a lower dominance role, a lower extroversion role, probably a higher patience role, and a higher formality precision role. As I cursor over the various people, I can see how their responses show up. Now, to make a long example short, I'm just going to basically select what I think the average of these will be. And I would go through this in much more detail if I was doing this for a client, or if I was a client finalizing this, but I'm basically going to take the average of what I saw here. And now, good rule of thumb is to set most of the targets at about 1 to 1.5 standard deviations for the various bands. And a good rule of thumb is about 2.5 standard deviations wide. So I'm a little wider than average here, but that's fine for this example. I scroll down the bottom, I can also start to see the cognitive results show up. Now, these are all showing up as pending because I didn't include the cognitive assessment in this particular job assessment, but basically I need to set a target somewhere on this continuum from 100 to 450, the average in the middle of the bell curve being 250, which would be an average cognitive level of requirement for the role. Starbucks barista doesn't really change a whole lot, pretty basic role, generally an entry-level role, so I would probably set that below average. I might pick somewhere in the 2 to 220 range as my target. I'll set the target here, and then it'll give me the option here to go through the guided process, or I can disable cognitive altogether. And you'll see over here on the left, I have the behavioral target. And if I click on the job report, it will give me some sample starting reference profiles to help me identify the behavioral profiles that would be most well suited to this role. I've got some language here that I can include in my job posting to help me attract the kind of candidate I'm looking for. And I've got a summary of the role as well as the job characteristics. So once I'm happy with this, I need to read through this, make sure it sounds like the role. Once I'm happy with this, I can finalize it, and then I can start to use this link here to assess candidates. And once the candidates complete the assessment, they'll start to show up down here. I can also click on this button here, other matches for this job, and see if there's anyone else in my database that actually would be a good match for this role that I might have either not hired or overlooked or potentially interviewed in the past for a different role, but also I can start to see how they might stack up next to this role. So that's just a really quick overview of how to use the predictive index job targeting assessment to start to set our benchmarks for the role, as well as start to gather assessments from candidates. And again, you can create as many of these links as you need to for various roles to help you in your recruiting efforts. The nice thing is that you can literally just copy this, put it into the job posting, and then as candidates complete their application, they can be directed to this link to simply complete the predictive index assessment in their language of choice. And that way you get the assessment data along with the application to help you make sure you're prioritizing your recruiting efforts on the candidates that have the best match to the role. So that's the predictive index job assessment for Starbucks barista. Hopefully this was helpful. Be sure to check out my other videos on the YouTube channel. Thanks.